Friends, you will agree with me that managers, I mean practicing managers and students of management sciences have to keep in mind the prevailing socio-economic, legal, political, and environmental conditions. And this lecture uh, is about that. There are three parts of this lecture. In the first part, we talk about the socio-economic political conditions. In the second part, we discuss how do sociologists look at social phenomena, what are different perspectives. And in the third part, we focus on gender. Now, what we say about gender can more or less be said about other forms of inequalities also, like class, urban rural residence, minority status, and so on. So I will share my slides. And the title of this presentation is Sociological Concepts, Culture, Values, Norms, Class, Gender, and Ethnicity. In limited time, we cannot cover everything, but this presentation will give you a fair idea of what these things are about. There are some resources for this, which I am not discussing. You can go through these original writings and learn more about it. You can also look for internet search and read some books on society in India. So this presentation makes a PESTEL analysis, a business analysis tool. PESTEL is a business analysis tool, and it's an abbreviation for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental issues. P stands for political, E for economic, S for social, T for technological, L for legal, and E for environmental. I will, as a sociologist, I will argue that in the final analysis, everything is social. And from social or sociological point of view, the legal rules are the only one types of norms. So this term L for legal, this is also part of society, part of social structure. Social structure specify rules of the game or norms of society, and legal rules are just one type of norm. There are other norms, we call them folkways, mores or ethics or conventions, traditions. Laws are among them. Usually, a traditional society can run itself on the basis of folkways and mores, but a modern urban society requires written rules, enacted laws, and therefore L becomes important. In technology, a number of things are included: perceptions of technology, choices of technologies, research and development activities, and understanding of environment. And all of them are closely connected with social structure, and therefore they are also social. Now, you will agree with me that all the components of PESTEL are quite complex and dynamic and require a detailed scientific analysis and planning. For India, P, politics means electoral democracy. E, economy, developing. India is a developing economy. S suggests that we are in the last phase of demographic transition. We are deeply religious. Most people are living in rural areas, but passing through a phase of modernization and individuation, which are the characteristics of urban populations, but these things are now happening in rural areas also. T stands for dependent technology. for technology, India is dependent on the developed countries like USA, Germany, France, Japan, and to some extent now on China also. Yet, there are great innovations in the IT sector in India. Legal, in India we are governed by a constitution. We have a complex judiciary from lower court to Supreme Court. We have labor commissioner. We have new codes. I may call them 2020 codes. There are 4 such codes which have tried to reform and combine all the existing labor laws in the country. And there are other government rules and regulations. E means severe environmental issues. India has severe environmental issues. Air quality index, as you know, of most cities in India is bad. There are seasonal variations in it, but overall also the condition is not good. And government, NGOs, community organizations, all are concerned about it. And this happens despite the fact that we are at a lower level of development. If our development level increases, if our energy consumption increases, then the environmental issues are going to become more aggravated. Now, in slightly more detail, political for India implies a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic that assures its citizens justice, equality, and liberty, and endeavors to promote fraternity. We have a federal form of government, and both the center and states have their own government. We have presidents for the All India governance and governors in each state, but practically all the powers lie with Prime Minister and Chief Ministers and Cabinet Secretary. The real power lies with the Prime Minister and Chief Ministers. President is only a symbolic head of the state, similarly governor. Electoral democracy we have, and a multi-party system. Elections fought on the plank of development as well as identity issues created by a long history of invasions, conflicts, and violence. The government is divided into different departments and ministries for regulating people's action in different domains. The business managers need to be updated on the business laws and policies in their respective field of business, agriculture, industry, startup, and infrastructure. Regarding economic scenario, we have a less developed or developing economy with relatively low per capita income, and opening of economy means that our economy is opening. License and permit Raj has been thrown to dustbin to a great extent. This all started in 80s and more so in 90s. We are still characterized by poverty and unemployment, and the situation of poverty and unemployment has worsened due to COVID. There is increasing informalization of work through contractual workers. Contractual work has become a new and legally acceptable institution in, in the work organizations. There is a high degree of inequality, regional, urban, rural, class, gender, community, and caste. Continued dependence on agriculture. Land is getting fragmented due to population pressure. And a large percentage of population of India works in the unregistered or informal sector. In terms of financial institutions, the market is highly volatile. And in social, demographic, cultural issues, we are passing through the demographic transition. Death rate has declined to a very low level of around 6 to 7,000, 6 to 7 per thousand population, while birth rate remains high. Our birth rate, not so high as it was at the time of independence, but at the time of independence it was more than 40. Now it has declined, but it is still close to 20. There is epidemiological transition. We have not won the infectious diseases or epidemics completely, but a new form of diseases, what are called lifestyle diseases, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, strokes, diabetes, blood pressure. These new forms of diseases and causes of death have emerged in a significant way, and they are going to stay. Maybe gradually proportion of infectious diseases will decline and proportion of lifestyle diseases or diseases of old age will increase. Modernization, traditionalization, westernization, everything is happening simultaneously. And it is not that some people are modernizing, some are traditionalizing. The same people are modernizing in some sense and traditionalizing in other senses and westernizing. For this kind of situation, a famous sociologist of India, Srinivas, used the term cultural schizophrenia, that we are modern in some sense and traditional in other senses. There is a process of individualization, mobilization, empowerment of women, globalization, impact of media or postmodernization. We are a soft state, to use a term from Gunnar Myrdal's books, Asian drama, and there is a lot of corruption. There are several reasons why there is so much of corruption. Poverty may be one, rising aspirations may be another, lack of detecting mechanism can also be a factor, although by definition, corruption means use of official resources for personal purposes are difficult to identify or bribe or antitrust laws, etc., etc. It's very difficult to provide proof of them. So most of the time, the corrupt people get relief from some or other court, if not lower court, ultimately from the Supreme Court. Selling by creating an image of serving. Yeah, this is a very good example of Patanjali. That in this kind of situation, you can sell. This is a lesson for market researchers, that you can sell by creating an image of serving the people. That you are selling not because you want to make profit, but because you want to serve people. And to use Subhash Sharma, we can say this is a Rishi model of marketing. So in this kind of situation, socioeconomic, demographic, technological, globalization, uneven growth of different industries, primary, secondary, tertiary, low investment in R&D activities, making us more and more dependent on developed economies, increasing reliance on computers for planning, analysis, information, knowledge, and predictions, innovations and startups, and new business possibilities in insurance, healthcare, quality, education, etc. So a lot of changes are taking place, and all these changes make us dependent on computing, computer services, IT sector, and artificial intelligence. In case of legal, we have, as I said, constitutional provisions, civil and criminal laws. But at the same time, there are delays in legal dispute settlements. And in settlement, there is a role of money, knowledge, and social capital or networks. There are also implementation issues. For example, among contractual workers, minimum wages are seldom paid, but you cannot do anything because the contractors get signatures of the contractual workers on paper that they have been paid the right amount of minimum wages. There is a new institution of corporate social responsibility that certain types of industries making profit must spend some part of their resources, some part of their profits on the welfare of society. But there is corruption in that, and many funds which should have been devoted to welfare of society have gone to party funds, political parties, and a large number of NGOs. I am myself associated with a number of NGOs, and I see that NGOs which can do genuine work among people are starving for money. The manipulation is possible through chartered accountants and company secretaries which deceive the state through their paperwork and manipulation. On the dimension of environment, there is a lot of carbon emission. This is a big issue internationally. There are also problems with the new energy sources like solar, and a lot of researchers have shown that our going for solar has created enormous problems for the local people where solar plants have been established. Problems of livelihood, problems of health, and problems of culture, disruption of social order. A number of problems have been created. Then we know that environment is associated with productivity, and there is a lot of air and water pollution, air quality index I mentioned. There is declining water table in all those areas where green revolution has been successful. There are economic and health impacts of fertilizers, insecticides, herbicides to the extent that Punjab, which supplies maximum of the food to the entire country, also has increasing number of cancer cases. One of the social issues before the management colleges as well as industries is the issue of diversity. That we are legally and ethically committed to create more diversity with respect to gender, ethnicity, and regional, linguistic, etc. Gender is the first and foremost issue. So let us try to understand a little bit about gender. Peter Nordhaus chapter 15 is devoted to gender, and it is said that gender gap is a global phenomenon. Women are less visible in business positions. Usual explanation is given either in terms of less human capital, that women are less educated, or in terms of dearth of qualified women, called the pipeline problem. 1986, two Wall Street journalists introduced the concept of glass ceiling for invisible barriers preventing women from rising to elite positions. So in any field, even in academics where women are more, the percentage of women in engineering, professional occupations, surgery, legal professions is certainly less. It is more in academics, but even in academics or in all those other professions where more women are entering, you find that they enter, but it becomes more difficult for them to rise to the elite position. So percentage of women at the level of assistant professors may be good, and that also varies from department to department. Maybe in humanities and social sciences there are more women. In computer sciences, mechanical engineering, there are less. But for them, becoming professor or dean or director is full of obstacles. These obstacles which prevent them from rising are called glass ceiling. On the other extreme, even in women-dominated professions, if there are some men, they enjoy a glass escalator and they rise faster. So there is a gender gap. And there is, in the same book, there is a concept of labyrinth for gender issues. In place of glass ceiling, they say that there is a labyrinth for women. And this labyrinth has several causes. Lack of human capital. Lack of human capital, educational differences, differences in specializations, in degrees, diplomas, technical education, and there are gender differences between men and women, and which are produced by society. So then there is another factor, devaluation of female leaders by male subordinates, again a social factor. There are social prejudices and discrimination ideas. There are discriminatory ideas that women are good for something and not good for other things. A common stereotype is that women have more of communal qualities, collectivistic qualities than agentic qualities needed for managerial roles, where somebody has to take an individual decision. Women are not so good. But for collectivistic qualities, for teamwork, women are somewhat better. Women are less suitable for certain jobs, military, this is also a myth, and better for others like education, health, especially nursing or gynecology or uh, or children related, for maternal and child health services. They can be good pediatricians, but they cannot be good surgeons. This is what social prejudices suggest. So there is a diagram in that book according to which these are the regions for leadership labyrinth, human capital, education, work experience, developmental opportunities, work-home conflict is a major factor that in most societies, women are not freed from family-related, home-related, household-related works. They have to take care of children, old people, their husbands, and they have to cook and they have to maintain the household. And then there are gender differences in style and effectiveness, commitment, motivation, self-promotion, negotiation, traits. I will say that all of these are social and they are highly determined by prejudices of society. Otherwise, there is no research evidence that women are less motivated or less committed. They are less motivated or less committed simply because they are under the dual burden, sometimes triple burden, dual burden of work and family. And there are prejudices, gender stereotypes, bias perception and evaluations, vulnerability, safety is a issue, and reactance and cross pressures. And so in this situation, that a woman can be called a superwoman if she sacrifices family to excel in every role. Means she is not normal. These kinds of opportunities are not for normal women, they are for super women. And there is flexibility of programs in post-industrial, post-modern society. You can work anytime, you can leave anytime, you can return to work anytime. But we find that for women, returning to work after they have resigned from work for family reasons or whatever reasons, mostly for the reasons associated with childbirth, it becomes difficult to return. They take mommy track roles and do not rise to the highest position. So somehow, until and unless the work at home is shared by both men and women, it will remain difficult for women to rise in their professions. So glass ceiling or labyrinth will stay. There is a myth, and sometimes a question is asked, are women leaders more people-oriented while men are task-oriented? There are all kinds of ideas about differences, and ultimately these differences lead to inequality. Researches show that this is not the case, but women can more easily adapt to participative leadership and involve subordinates in decision making. So wherever in management you have such opportunities, you should rather prefer women. The reason for this is socialization. More egalitarian and less status conscious women are, and several Hindi pictures have also shown the sacrificing didis. Women make sacrifices. Women are expected to make sacrifices. Women are adored to make sacrifices, and they are not very possessive about resources. They are more egalitarian, and they do not worry about status also so much. So, but these are all myths. In the West, they are found to be better in coaching, teamwork, and empowering. I will say that all these things are myths, and women can do everything that men can do. If there are differences, if there are stereotypes, if there are barriers, obstacles, if there are glass ceilings, sometimes called plexi ceiling, sometimes labyrinth, that is because of society. But there is a light, some light at the end of the tunnel. Things are changing, things are becoming better. Women are navigating through the labyrinth. Roles have become more flexible. More and more organizations show the diversity concerns. And certain organizations, they have either fixed a quota for women. Many government organizations, many government colleges, schools have fixed a quota for women. And there is a quota for women in leadership at the grassroots level in the village, in local bodies. But even where there is no quota, there is a preference for women. Diversity is something which is valued by most organizations everywhere, including in India. And there are also new women entrepreneurs starting their own ventures. And the mental models of men are also changing. Men are becoming more understanding and supportive and sharing of family roles. The East Asian model shows that what is happening in East Asia, in order for population to stabilize, what is happening in East Asia means sharing of work at home. That has to be happening in all countries of the world, developed or less developed. You may like to see some of the following papers. These are based on our researches. Hegemonic masculinity or masculine domination, gendered labor process, liberal gender equality and social difference. All three papers were published in International Journal of Sociology and Social Policy, and these studies were done at IIT Kanpur. The data were collected from an IT company. Now, coming to perspectives, there are 5 major perspectives in sociology. Functionalism sees everything as organized, structured, and everything that exists in society, any event, any fact, any institution, any service that exists for the benefit of the larger society. So functionalists will see functions of everything, although later on some functionalists like R.K. Merton have also talked of dysfunctions and functions and dysfunctions at macro level, micro level. Something may be good for society, but not good for certain groups or certain individuals. But by and large, the term functionalism means looking for the functions of society. So then there is Marxism. Marxism gives more importance to change, relations of production, and says that that at any stage of development in society, there are certain types of class relations, and these class relations based on economic factors, based on relations to means of production, also determine consciousness of people. So ideas about gender, ideas about God, ideas about law, ethics, nationalism, and all kinds of ideas are governed by relations of production. Symbolic interactionism is a micro level theory and explains things at the individual level. Usually this theory has been applied in the studies of deviance. Why do some people become deviants? And in education, why do some students do well and some students do poorly? It is students who do poorly do so because their self-image is distorted, and self-image is distorted because of the reactions they get from their peer, their teacher, their society, their family. So our interactions are symbolic, and we tend to develop our self-image on the basis of people's reaction, our understanding of people's reactions towards us. Social action theory gives more importance to subjective understanding of action to people. I can say that Max Weber is a major contributor to social action theory, and then there is postmodernism. Postmodernism, which says that the theory is that there is no theory. So functionalism, integration, organization, common values, common purpose of workers, employers, industry, business interacts with the state, economy, relationship, education, family, and other institutions, and scientific experimental methods to understand and solve a problem. Marxism focuses on contradictions in society, conflicts, struggle of workers against the prevailing relations of production. Initially, workers suffer from false consciousness, but with the help of a political party, a revolutionary party, communist party, the moment they gain revolutionary consciousness, they overthrow the capitalist structure, capitalist state, and create a dictatorship of proletariat, which takes the society ultimately to communism or socialism. And in this model, employers are always exploitative. State, economy, religion, education, family, and other institutions are shaped by class structure of society. And this theory attacks positivism, or the idea that all issues pertaining to society can be studied scientifically. Symbolic interactionism focuses on modifying human behavior, that we need to understand subjective meaning. Meanings are product of social context, biography, and communication systems, and follows a qualitative method or the narrative approach. Social action focuses on how individuals define each other and their interactions. It's very close to symbolic interactionism. So And in short, there are macro theories, micro theories. Macro theory talk about relationships between different institutions of society. In functionalism, they are cooperative. In Marxism, they are conflicting. And there is a micro sociology, symbolic interactionism, and social action theory, which talk about interactions and subjective interpretation, subjective understanding of people. How do individuals define each other? And then postmodernity is that stand of thought according to which now no theory, the conditions of society are such that no theory can explain everything and in all situations. So end of all theories and idea and expertise. Even for consultancy now, it is believed that for management consultancy, not outsiders, but people who have had the experience of changes within the organization can give better advice, better insights than the outside or academic consultant. Everything is reversing. In postmodern theory, everything is reversing. Society is becoming complex and complex, more complex. For example, in a traditional framework, in the study of motivation, two things were important: task and the individual needs. Gradually, the attention has shifted to behavior of individuals. Now, in the postmodern world, with teamwork and matrix structure of the work organization, two more things have been added: common task of the team and individual needs of different group members who are part of one line and one or more teams. This is a complex situation. The earlier motivational theories worked in simple organizations, hierarchical organizations, a situation of line and staff. But now, when we work in matrix structure, means if, the same person is part of several projects and assigned several roles in the organization. And there may be role conflicts, there may be role congruence, and needs of individuals in different situations may also be different. Needs of different workers may be different. So we have a more complex situation. The issues have become more complex. Even the individual shaped by the forces of postmodernization is not the same as one shaped by a well-integrated tradition. Well-integrated tradition produce some kind of collective consciousness, and everybody strongly identified with society and culture. But this is no more the case today. The next lecture will explore the characteristics of Indian society and their implications for work motivation. Thank you. We stop here. So friends, in this lecture, we have been able to talk about different aspects of society, like gender, class, political situation, environment. And I have shown you some characteristics of Indian society. Actually, some of these issues are universal, like gender issue is a universal issue. The causes of gender disparity are also universal. The causes of class differences are universal. The problems of minorities and ethnic populations, tribal population, indigenous populations are universal, and they are not confined to India only. But things are changing, and societies are becoming more democratic, more egalitarian, more diverse, and more organizations the world over are going for diversity. So sometimes there are legal support for diversity, and governments have fixed certain quotas for women in different jobs and in educational institutions. And sometimes in private sector and NGOs, there is a preference for women. So condition of women, similarly condition of ethnic minorities and indigenous populations, that is also improving. We hope that in the future, our society will move towards a more democratic, more transparent, more egalitarian system, um, um, partly because of master processes of change and partly because of works or movements, because of movements um, started by the downtrodden, women, indigenous population, ethnic groups, regions which are backward, and their combinations, various types of combinations. So we will talk about Indian society more in the next lecture, as I said. Thank you.